Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living your life to the fullest? Well, I know I am, and I think it's about time we got back to it, don't you? Welcome, my friends, to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Do you feel a sense of awareness for something deeper, something more divine, more sacred, that you long to connect to and to understand? Do you have this deep feeling within you that a higher state of being exists and that you are being drawn towards it? Well, chances are, if you are listening to this podcast, that is indeed the case. And we understand that in order to live a fully engaged life means that we have to live on a bit of a different plane than what many people tend to experience in their lifetime. We have to have a sense of awareness, of mindfulness, of connection to the sacred, to an understanding of the divine, both within us and around us. For it is that which ignites our passion for life and allows us to experience this incredible adventure to the fullest. So what's stopping you? What prevents us from accomplishing that? Well, one could say that it begins with the barrier of the mind and the ego. And the thinking mind, the mind and ego, are a barrier, a wall of sorts that block us from connecting to our true nature, our higher sense of self, our essence. This is why it is so important for us to work with the mind. We need tools, practices that allow us to work with our mind and the ego in a way that can free us from both of those. And as we know, meditation is the primary method for accomplishing that. Because when you go into meditation, you are in a state of no mind. And when there is no mind, there is no thought, and there is no ego. So it allows us to transcend that and truly connect to our divine nature. But most of the time, we find that we have an obstacle in our path. And this obstacle has two sides. It is our thoughts and our emotions. We have to investigate and work with our thoughts and emotions as a way to break through this barrier of the mind and ego in order to actually connect to our essence, our true self. And this is why any true spiritual system has various practices in place that allow us to explore, investigate, and understand how our mind works. In addition to that, the practices include ways to fix problems within the patterns of the program that is generally constantly running through our subconscious mind. We also then have to explore and investigate our emotions. And in so doing, you will come to realize that the vast majority, if not practically all, of your emotions are directly interlinked with your thoughts. And this is kind of a cycle that the ordinary mind experiences. Our emotions can be triggered by our thoughts, as well as our emotions triggering thoughts. And this is why these authentic spiritual systems provide us with specific practices through which we become capable of gaining control over our emotions. Because if we are not in control of our emotions, then our emotions will control us. And then as you get into this and explore the mind, you will see just how interconnected and reliant upon one another the thoughts, the emotions, and the ego truly are. And this is one of the biggest barriers between us and our sense of divinity, our essence. This is what prevents us from reconnecting to it. And let's face it, this is probably one of the most powerful drives that we have deep within us as human beings. So the first thing we have to understand about this is that our mind suffers from an affliction, and that affliction is generated by the ego, and it is then stimulated through thoughts and emotions. And because the vast majority of the time our emotions are triggered by our thoughts, we have to go back and work on our thoughts first. And I've done entire podcasts on the emotions, so you could go back and reference those, but just very quickly, we have emotions that are triggered by our thoughts. This is probably 95% of what we actually experience at any given point in time. And then there's a minor occurrence where we can have a raw emotion and then it triggers thoughts afterwards. And then in the very rare occasion where our heart is actually totally open and we are connected to everything and everyone, that's when we have true emotion from the heart center. That's when we can experience love and appreciation and true bliss. These are the emotions that come straight from the heart. And this happens only when we have established this connection to our essence. So the first thing we have to do is start to work on our thoughts. And I have taught ways to do that both in my book and in previous podcasts, so you can reference those. Because if we look at this, there's thought, there's word, and there's action. And thought always comes first. Those are not in a random order. They're in a very specific order. So we want to explore and reconcile issues with our thought patterns before we worry about our words and our actions, because our words and our actions are triggered by thought. Are you getting the picture here? Everything is kind of going back to thoughts. So it isn't enough just to have positive thoughts. We have to make sure that those thoughts are being generated by our true self and not our ego. We have to be able to silence those thoughts. We have to be able to allow them to quiet down so we can actually hear the true voice and inspiration of our higher self, of our essence. My wonderful wife and I were having a deep conversation the other evening about this type of subject. And we were talking about how people, through spirituality, are capable of connecting to powerful energies. And she asked a fantastic question. She said, well, there seems to be good and bad people, and they seem to use good and bad energy. So does that mean that the energy in the field all around us, whether you call it source or God or heaven or whatever you want to call it, this energy that is all around us that we draw from, this universal energy, does that have evil and divine frequencies to it? Is it like that? And that question was incredibly profound, and I'd like to explore that with all of you so you can benefit as we did from this conversation. So We have people that are able to tap into some of these energies, and we can use them for different purposes. If we look at this from sort of a martial arts perspective, if the martial artist trains correctly over time, they become capable of creating a lot of harm with their hands. And at the same time, they develop the ability to do incredible healing. It's the same energy that is used to harm someone when we hit them as if we rest our hand gently on them to heal them. What is the difference? The intent, the mental intent of the human being is what makes it different. It's the same energy that's being used. Okay, so now if we look at this from a spiritual connection, we could have people that pray for something good. We could have people that pray for something bad. Or if you understand mudra, things like the Kuji no In or the Kuji Kiri, they could use that for good. They could use that for evil purposes. What determines which way it is used? The same answer, a person's intention. So it's the same energy. There is only one energy. Okay, and so we're drawing from this energy. We're connecting to this energy field, chi field, whatever you want to call it, all around us. And we can bring that into us, and we can then use that for something good or something evil. Our intention is the guiding force of that. And what dictates our intention, whether to do something divinely inspired or something more evil? It goes back to the mind. The intent is spawned from the mind. So it depends if our mind is in a state of being healthy or if our mind is ill. When our mind is healthy, we have a tendency to focus on the good and the helpful, not the destructive. And when our mind is ill, then we lean towards that destruction that we call evil. Is there an evil energy and a good energy? No. There's only one energy. What makes it good or evil is what a human being does with it, the way they focus it. For instance, if we have a wolf, right? So there's an animal out there, there's a wolf, and it jumps on and kills another animal, maybe a rabbit. And so is that wolf's mind evil? No. It's eating, it's feeding. It's not going to kill it for the joy of killing it. It's not going to kill it just for the fun of it, just to amuse itself or out of some sick, twisted satisfaction. It's going to do it only if it needs to eat. See, this is the same with the animal kingdom, is animals don't have good and evil. Now, yeah, there are some animals that are nicer than others and that sort of thing, but they cannot do evil. Human beings are the only ones that can do evil. Why? Because animals don't have egos. People do, and it is the ego that twists the mind. Once you are capable of connecting to this energy, you are able to immediately ascertain that it is something divine. You just feel the connection to this incredibly high vibration. And we have come to know through the teachings and through our own experiences that this energy is the highest vibrational frequency possible. And that's why we interpret it as something as powerful as love. So when we connect to this energy, we draw this energy in, it is pure love, high vibrational frequency energy. And then the mind gets involved. And it is the mind that sets up the intent and decides how to direct that energy. So we can pollute and pervert it with our mind, with the ego. We also have the ability to leave it as pure as possible. This is the idea of energy healing. And it's never pure because it has to go through our physical form. Even if we can get our mind out of the way, it still has to go through our form, which generally brings down the vibration of the energy a little bit. We understand this through matter because that's all matter is very dense, low vibration frequency energy. So our form is that low frequency, so that frequency coming through us isn't as pure and as powerful as it is as we bring it in. But we can keep it in as high a frequency as possible. So the more we get our mind out of the way, the higher the frequency is capable of being. The more that we cleanse our body so we don't have blockages and stagnation, the higher the frequency can be as the energy passes through us. That's why physical practices are every bit as important as mental practices. And I always get the question of, well, what about those areas like you walk into an old, abandoned, dilapidated psychiatric facility and it just feels terrible in there. You just want to cry or run screaming out of the place because it feels so bad. Yeah, that's the energetic imprint that is left in that area. And it is there because of the mind. Okay, so it isn't that there's evil energy or that place isn't evil. It's the residue left upon the energy in that area by the minds that inhabited it. I contend that the greatest, most evil force in this world is the human mind when it is twisted and suffering from some sort of mental illness. This is where evil comes from. And in order to validate that, at this point in time, all you have to do is look around. It's not hard to see that this is the case. Look at all of the rioting and the violence going on right now. The rioting and the beating of innocent people, the killing of innocent people. There's no evil force driving that. Some evil invisible force. That is a result of what is going on in the minds of those individuals. Likewise, for all of those who are protesting peacefully and trying to come together, we can see the goodness going on in their mind. Everyone is drawing from the same energy, but how the mind decides to process it and create the intention in which it's going to deliver it through the words and actions, it's dictated from the mind, and that comes first and foremost from your thoughts. So beginning to work on our thoughts is one of the most crucial forms of practice in an authentic spiritual system. Likewise, it's usually the first thing you begin working on. The first thing is to start to look at and recognize and explore and investigate certain things about your thoughts, and then come to understand why those thoughts come about, and then understand how they come about. And that leads us to the ability to kind of rewire how we think and eventually go beyond thought altogether to where we can shut thought down. So there's no thought running around our subconscious mind. There's no thought running around our conscious mind. Everything comes to a point of silence and stillness, and there is no thought. There is no mind. There is no ego. So as the thoughts are so connected to emotion, look at how this ripples out. So if we have a good thought, we have a compassionate thought, like I'm going to shake hands and hug someone, that action is spawned from a good thought, as well as influencing my emotion to be a positive, friendly, loving, compassionate one. And then the action takes place that reflects that. Likewise, if my thoughts are not healthy and my emotions are influenced by those unhealthy thoughts, then I may produce emotions of hatred and anger. And then what happens is my actions then are violent. So in order to control our emotions, in order to control our intention, we have to first control our thought and the thinking process itself. So one of the things that is necessary is we have to come to terms with the fact that there is almost always some form of distorted thought running in the background of our mind, in the subconscious mind. And this is creating a sense of negative emotion and negative intent. And it is only once we are able to address the thoughts and bring the mind to a state of calm where we can ease all of these random thoughts running around our head and offer us relief. So here's a way to explore this. The next time you have a positive thought about something or someone, catch yourself and then sit and contemplate on how that thought arose. What triggered that thought? And why does it carry that emotional charge? The same when you have a negative thought. And let's face it, with everything going on today, this side of it is probably a lot easier to investigate, isn't it? Unfortunately. But we do have a rather dynamic example to work with right now, so we can use this to our advantage, our spiritual growth advantage. So next time you have a negative thought, think back why. Why are you having this negative thought? What was triggering it? Was it an emotion? What's the vibrational frequency of that emotion? Was it the ego? How is the ego involved? And take a look at what was the thought, the initial thought that sparked the reaction from the emotions and the reaction from the ego that then brought that negative emotional charge to that thought. This is a very simple way to begin investigating, exploring, and understanding your thoughts and the thought process, as well as the patterns that are typical for your particular mind. This can be a very fascinating practice to catch yourself with one of those thoughts, positive or negative, and don't try and change it to appease your ego. Let it be what it is. It just is what it is. Don't place judgment on yourself for the thought you're having. Just let it be what it is, because that's what we need to truly investigate it. And this is the first step to breaking through this incredibly massive barrier to connect to your essence, to your higher self, to who you truly are. And once you start to tear down this barrier, you'll notice that the other barriers are a little easier. And once these barriers have been brought down, and you are capable of hearing your true voice, of connecting to your higher self, and attaining the ability to feel that this is truly who and what you are, then you will begin to know what it is to live fully engaged. Please make sure and visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. Make sure and get your autographed copy of Expansion Mastery there, as well as the ebook on reinventing yourself in your life. And please continue to help us with all the comments, the shares, the likes, and the incredible things you guys are doing to show your support. Until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care.